Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm back again, quite quickly. Is what happens when I find a what if that I really enjoy. I did read a comment on the order of the events that happened in My Hero Academia, so I'm going to try as hard as I can to follow that guide. But considering the fact that I want to get this over with, and I also want to have more time to do the story, I will begin now. But I'll still be me. So don't expect anything too different. Well, after all the events of the heroes versus villains, and especially Izuku telling everybody that he doesn't really sleep, they began to really, they began to think about, Izuku's quirk. Well, they don't think it's a quirk anymore. They think that it's something completely different. They think that it's nowhere near a quirk. It might be a suit. Who knows? And something might be wrong, or he might have, some mental disorder. And they don't know how right they are. And during the next day, after this challenge, Izuku and the class are headed off to the USJ. And during the bus, they ask Izuku what his quirk is. And he doesn't really answer them, as he's focused on other things right now. Because in this last night, he had more visions and more vivid visions than usual. And they were bothering him beyond compare now. So, not to worry anyone else, he decided to be quiet, even when people asked him a question or two, which made them worry about Izuku's. Hang on. Someone's gonna clip that and probably gonna use it as a meme. I am aware that somebody is going to use it as a meme, and I will laugh if I see it used as a meme. I will honestly like that person so fucking much and save that video in a separate playlist just for that. But yeah, anywho. So, Izuku he's pretty much ignoring everyone on the train, but not on the fucking bus. My god, I'm not that tired at the moment. Well, on the bus, but he does take measure of all their quirks, how they work in a way, just to make sure that he knows what his classmates are capable of, and what they are, quirk-wise. My apologies for that, excuse me. But this doesn't really bother Izuku very much, even though he knows that some of them have extremely powerful quirks, or quirks possibly potent enough to cause some damage. That he doesn't really care about, as long as he uses them to do the right thing. But Izuku's also drifting off on that as well. What is the right thing? He asked himself. If killing is immoral, but it's also used to save lives, does that mean that it contradicts moral? It contradicts moral guidance and human morals? Does that mean that killing is okay in some circumstances? He doesn't know. Not at this time. He feels alone, as though nobody can help him, nor do people really know him. So he keeps staying in the back and being quiet. And once they get into the USJ, Izuku isn't truly listening to 13. The reason he isn't listening to 13 is because he can tell that it's like the USJ is massive. And with his scanner, he's taking a good zoomed look about the place, just getting a bit of an idea of where and how he's going to be sent off. Are they going to take him there, fire something? Or are they just going to send them off? What's going to happen? in the USJ. But then Izuku's threat gauge went up yellow on the left side of his visor, and his suit began to speak to him. Warning, warning, hostiles detected. And Izuku looked down at the bottom of the stairs, seeing a portal opening up, and over 100 diamonds appearing in it. And he scanned as many as he could, and he was able to get their quirks. And he couldn't see their limits, but he could get a very slight description on what they were capable of. But he saw one that came out last. A boy named Shigaraki. And Shigaraki, he himself, looked as though he would be the commanding officer. And the person who came out with him from the portal itself went into like a human form state. And Shigaraki told him to teleport the kids about. And this caused Aizawa to, of course, in canon, jump down there. But there was one other thing that came, and that Izuku scared. The Nomu. And when he scanned the Nomu, he saw that this Nomu was a mixture of many, many quirks. Shock absorption, regeneration, speed, strength. It had so many quirks. It was weird. He wasn't aware that so many quirks could exist in a body at once. That a body would be able to handle those. But he quickly deciphered that this thing was fake. It was artificial. Created by someone. Which sort of raised his suspicion quite a lot. Why would the villains create such a thing? Why and how? Those were his questions, but as he was thinking that, he was teleported away, appearing with Tsuyu and Mineta, and he looked at them both, and they looked at him. And Izuku then looked into the water, thinking that possibly he could just swim them to shore, right? Tsuyu would be fine in the water, but not Mineta. So he could just carry Mineta to shore, and easy be done. Though, he then saw diamonds in the pool, and scanned them. There were people with aquatic quirks. Animalistic aquatic quirks. Their bodies were mutated, had abilities that responded to their gene, the quirk gene. Some were sharks, some frogs like Tsuyu, some toads like Tsuyu, well, unlike Tsuyu. And also there was some dolphins? What the fuck? But he quickly turned to Tsuyu and Mineta and said, they have aquatic villains. We have to be careful about this. If we mess up, we'll have a big amount of trouble. Then he remembered Mineta's quirk and looked at him. Mineta, those balls on your head, can you throw as much as you can in there? After all, they don't know what they can do. There could be bombs of some sort. They could explode. So, and Mineta got the drift, and nodded with absolute. Well, he was absolutely terrified. But he kept throwing them in. The villains began to back away, confused at the fact of this thing in the water. Though Izuku in this didn't cause the whirlwind in the lake. Instead, he told Mineta to get on his back, which he did, and Tsuyu, as Izuku jumped, to attach her tail to his leg, so they would be around his waist, so he'd be able to take her with him. And Tsuyu nodded, saying,
Well, are you able to handle that?
He said, yes, and Izuku just nodded. He was more focused in what was happening to poor Aizawa. He was getting absolutely shredded by the Nomu, and Shigaraki was having his way, chipping his elbow ever so slowly, and the muscle inside was beginning to show. So Izuku needed to do something, and quickly leaped. Mineta holding on to Izuku as much as he can, and Tsuyu wrapping her tongue quickly around his waist. And they got there in a flash, due to Izuku's running start and momentum by using the edge of the boat as a boost as he leaped. And he just barely made it to shore. And he quickly ran over to Aizawa and knocked Shigaraki away. Looking at the Nomu and scanning it again. Nanovision enabled. And he looked down. The creature didn't have a thermal cloaking, and it did have heat. Of course it had heat. Those are the laws of science. Anything that has friction must have heat. Whereas anything that does not, and is basically a lubricant or is covered in lubricant, does not have heat unless it's flammable and has been ignited. That or is being cooked. And so Izuku knew that it was alive, but it was just a puppet. Something that was used to possibly kill All Might, because its speed and strength was ridiculous. And Izuku did match up All Might's speeds, about Mach 200, and his strengths equal to All Might's overly large amount of strength. So Izuku, knowing he can't really go up against this thing, he still tried. Using the maximum armor mode to hold off against the Nomu's punches, which pissed Shigaraki up a bit more as he violently scratched the side of his neck. He's cheating, he's cheating, he's cheating! Ah! Nomu, get him! And the Nomu began going faster and faster, and Izuku's HUD beeped down the bottom. Oh, flashed down the bottom. Low energy popped up. And Izuku knew he didn't have long left. Though he accessed his suit's upgrade modules and activated a full armor set, and he turned his maximum armor off, dodging the Nomu for as long as he can, just barely, but just enough for his suit to complete recharging. And right before the Nomu hit him again, he reactivated his armor. Maximum armor. And instead of the blue lining he saw in the nanotech on his visor, the lining was yellow, golden. And Izuku took hit after hit, barely even moving back. And Izuku took down the damage reduction from about 70 to 80% to about 60 to 70%, and put the rest of the energy into his strength, just to help take care of the Nomu a little bit. And after a while, he noticed the Nomu's brain. It had extremely sensitive shielding and could be easily pierced by something really sharp. But Izuku didn't really have anything sharp on him before he saw a large shard on the ground from Aizawa's glasses. Well, eye guards. And he took that and leaped up onto the Nomu, swinging up onto its back, and raised his arms, holding it, eventually plunging the shard into the Nomu's brain, causing the brain to bleed and the Nomu to freeze up. And Shigaraki thought it would regenerate from that, but it didn't. And the Nomu dropped. And Izuku got up, breathing quite heavily like he was tired, but he couldn't feel his lungs. Did his lungs even exist anymore? Did his heart exist? He couldn't feel his heart. Not at all. He couldn't feel the impacts on his kidney either. Neither of his kidneys felt pain. Did they exist? Did his stomach exist? What was going on? Well, the only idea he could take from that was that it was the suit. The suit was doing all of this. It reforged his body, replacing all the organs and replacing them with something else. Something else entirely. And his reaction speed was completely inhuman. So he also got it to where he could also detect lies. So he came to the conclusion that his brain was heavily modified. to the point to where he was no longer human. He was more of a logical war machine. Something that could decimate armies, entire battalions easily. Could tank shells without even worrying about it. And Izuku remained. Checking the Nomu for activity, with 0 vital signs remaining. So Izuku got up and let go of the shard, picking up Aizawa, and Aizawa being like, shouldn't. It's like, get them, get the villains. It's like, no, you need immediate medical help. I'm not letting you die on me. Not once, not ever, not even a little bit. You're injured. I can't really do anything except for help. So that's what I'm gonna do. Then the villain with the gun fingers came up, using those guns on his fingers to start shooting at Izuku, which Izuku used his back to block them, using his armor, and continued walking over. And 13 was pretty damn well damaged, and Ida did go. So when the heroes got there, it was a sudden shot, and Shigaraki's shoulders were bleeding. He was shot by a bullet, revolver, and it was so precise. And he went to go get Izuku, but another shot sounded off, hitting his left kneecap, which put him in enormous pain. And Kurogiri, managing to slip out from underneath Bakugo, was able to at very least teleport him and Shigaraki out of the area. And All Might immediately went down to Izuku. Izuku, are you alright? He said, yes, All Might. I'm fine. Aizawa, I'm not very sure about him. He's in enormous pain. I don't know if he can stay conscious for long. But he's been doing really good so far. I have to commend him for that one. And All Might noticed how mature Izuku was acting. Like, this sight didn't bother him. It did. But he was hiding it very, very well. He was hiding it as though he had nothing to really fear. After all, oh, I forgot her name. Healing Lady or something. I'm honestly really sorry. She's the one character that we do not see enough, so I don't remember her hero name. I do apologize. And so afterwards, news of it got out to the public, as all the villains were either arrested or retreated, which caused Izuku to sort of know what was happening next. The news would have come after them 110%. They wouldn't just let this fly. It's a chance for intel, to get an insight to what's going on and possibly turn the tables on UA, making them seem incompetent. And what he suggested on the day to Nezu is that students shouldn't be allowed to say anything. And Nezu agreed, saying that was an extremely smart idea. That the less the media knows, the better, as the media doesn't need to know about this incident since it's an inside UA incident, and that it was swiftly taken care of without too much trouble. Students weren't hurt, and there was only one teacher who was injured, Aizawa. That's all. He just had a bandage that was attending to the wounds around him, and with medicine that would attend to the muscles inside of his arm. But nothing would really hurt him much, because that was all. And since Snipe got there, or Deadeye, I can't... Yeah, it's Snipe, I remember now. His name is Snipe. Considering Snipe got there, well, it went a teeny bit smoother, because if Shigaraki got to Izuku, Shigaraki may or may not have a few broken bones because of it. Izuku wouldn't have just stood there and let him decay the Nanosuit, even if it could self-repair. especially from decayed nanites. Because before, when he was in space, the alien spacesuit that he had, when he got inside of the ship, it immediately began regenerating, and did so very, very quickly, without much effort at all. So he knew the nanosuit had some sort of self-repair, and considering that the hits from the Nomu didn't really hurt Izuku, but were fixed pretty much instantly, also gave him the insight that the suit could heal him at the same time, which made him quite happy about having the suit on, meaning he wouldn't have to worry about injuries. But he still wouldn't be risky, as he can still die. He's sure of that. But he just doesn't know what it will take to kill him. He doesn't know what it will take to take him down. But, hey, at the very least, UA gets about 3 weeks off of... All of 1A gets about 3 weeks off of school to prepare and possibly regenerate their mental state, become stable again. Just after that incident, they could have seen some things that really messed them up, or stress could have overwhelmed them. So of course they gave them time off, especially to cool down. Izuku, however, didn't have time to cool down. He kept having his visions over and over again. And each vision that happened began to turn him more and more, as the visions were messing with his head. It always hurt. Oh, so much. And it wasn't just a simple migraine. These things fucking hurt him. They really, really hurt his head. But Izuku still studied nonetheless. Studying quirks and psychology at the same... Well, he only really needed to study quirks. After all, the suit did most of the calculations and analytics. So all he had to do was make the decisions. That was all he needed to do. The AI even gave him some recommendations for some things to do, but that was on the occasion that Izuku couldn't make a proper decision, which very rarely happened. And because of these visions, and that some of them turned out to be true, as the government proceeded to find sightings of Seth about, they sort of nicknamed him Prophet. And also, they told UA that could be his potential hero name. It's mysterious, but at the same time, it sort of gives people hope that there is a hero that may be able to help them in times of need, that he can pop out of nowhere and assist them if needed. But since he doesn't have his hero license, and he won't get it until after the fight with All for One, he really will not be able to do that hero work. But after those weeks were over and everyone came back and began chatting, Aizawa said that they had a training camp. A camp in the forest with a group of professional heroes called the Wild Wild Pussycats. That they would train them, and that also they would have to train themselves. Make their quirks stronger, more effective. They'd have to get used to things they weren't used to before. Make them faster, better, faster, and stronger. I don't know if I got that reference right, but we'll see in the comments section. Because I'll probably get absolutely fucked for making that line and be memed out of. But hey, who knows what'll happen after this, after I upload it. But anyway, and Izuku at first was just picking things up, reading more books on quirks, making sure he had everything down. The suit may have had science and every other topic answered, but quirks was still an anomaly, and he was researching them. Every single page that was read, and every single word that he read, was documented into files and data, just to make sure that he never forgot them, so he'd have access to the information whenever he needed it. And he got these books from actual quirk scientists. He didn't just get them at the library just because he thought they were cool. He wanted the information. So, he went and got it himself, and began studying quite a ton, even on the bus, and even when they got there. But when that woman one of the Blue Wawa Pussycat attempted to sort of, girl on Izuku, Izuku just stood there and looked down at her with a glare, saying that it wouldn't be a good idea to want him especially, considering that, well, it wouldn't be very nice, would it? Having someone like him, after all, he can't even do that. So no matter how hard she tried, she wouldn't get very far. And she gave up rather quickly because of it. Having no reason to keep going, she ignored it, forgot about the topic entirely, unless she met somebody else. That was pretty unfortunate, however, but during the first few days, Izuku was the main one to cook. He was an excellent cook. Even though the suit did help him from time to time, Izuku sometimes cooked for his mother when he was still normal. He had no reason to stay away from people, nor had a reason to really go outside. Well, more like he didn't have a reason to really care about other things. He cared about his information, nothing too bad. And so he was quite the good cook as he took over cooking from time to time, which was quite the good learning curve for him alongside the suit. But nonetheless, everyone loved Izuku's cooking. And when they asked why he wasn't eating, he had to tell them a second time, "I can't eat. I don't think I can eat." And she took that and they all took that as weird as all hell. So it got to the point to where everyone all at once asked Izuku if that suit of his, that second skin, was truly a quirk. And Izuku stayed quiet for a second. And he said, "It's not a quirk. I'm not sure if I'm even human anymore. I see these visions every night, even though I don't sleep. Sometimes even in the middle of walking or in a battlefield. Even when everything's calm, I sometimes have them. Like the aliens that have been He's like, even with the things that have been popping up on the news. Sometimes it's just weird. But no, this isn't a quirk. Nowhere near. It can't be classified as a quirk considering what it's capable of, as I'd have already reached my limit if it was a quirk." And they all took it weirdly in their own ways, but Bakugo was sort of a bit tipsy about it. A bit weirded out at the fact that Izuku was mature, sincere, and knowledgeable. Something was wrong about this Izuku, and he wanted to know what. But he didn't have enough time to. Because on the third night, they were attacked. The Fire Nation attacked. I'm kidding. The camp was attacked by villains, and Dabi started it off with twice, as he burned down the forest a little bit, and at the same time went up against Aizawa, who won relatively quickly. And Izuku came out, hearing the noises from his amplified hearing, and jumped in front of the fire that Dabi was blasting Aizawa with, using his armor to not give a flying shit about it. And he ran through it and grabbed Dabi, throwing him aside and saying, "Why are you here? Why are you here of all places? How did you know we were here? Let me guess, there's a traitor around? Because no one on the outside knows of this. We never told anyone. The only people that know are our parents." So, I'm going to guess there's a traitor. And Darby said, aren't you too smart for your own good? And Izuku just stared him down and said, well, that's your problem, not mine. As I know my limits and I know what I can and can't do. I'm not sure if you do. And Darby took that as a little bit of an offense, but wasn't too bothered by it. Because, who knows, he was just ordered to do this by some guy who was skinnier than a stick. That he looked like he really needed some good feeding, but hey, you can't really annoy Shigaraki unless you want to lose an elbow or two. Or your neck, / your life. But hey, that's up to Shigaraki's mood at the time of insult. And Izuku took care of Darby pretty quickly, but Darby got out of there. And Izuku heard something about a kid being captured, something along those lines. And he immediately asked where, and one of the Wild Pussycats said maybe in the forest. So Izuku zoomed in on the forest and looked around on the mountain ridge, and saw a teeny bit of movement. Considering his vision, his sort of just zoom wasn't quite enough, so he switched a module out for a scanner's range enhancing one, which enhanced it by about 50%. And he saw Kota and an extremely large, about 7'2" man. And so Izuku sprinted off, putting all of his energy into speed. Maximum speed, his suit yelled. And he immediately burst through the forest, going as fast as he could. And as Muscular caught up with Kota, well, the villain, Muscular, Izuku quickly jumped in front and took a blow, and not having his armor on in time, was pushed back a little bit. Well, pushed into the mountainside a little bit. And Muscular was like, oh? He's like, really? That's all? And Izuku quickly got out of the mountain. Not really. Not at all. Considering I saw this coming, there was no real need for me to worry. But, after all, it's a child we're talking about, and I'm here to help him. That's what heroes do, don't we? And Muscular laughed. So, what's your name? And he said, people, they call me Prophet. And he's like, Prophet? The guy they keep mentioning on TV? On the news? He's like, that's close enough. And Muscular laughed again, with a little bit of a small wheeze. What a joke. Alright, show me what you can do, Prophet! And he rushed towards him. And Izuku, seeing how irrational Muscular's movements were proceeded to dodge, besides getting hit a few times, but because of his armor, he didn't need to worry too much about it. Though his energy did get low after a little bit, because he had to burst all the way here with all of his energy and speed. And he doesn't have anything boosting him energy-wise either. So, he has to really worry about his energy count. So he keeps an eye on that and Muscular throughout the fight, but manages to land a few good hits on Muscular's stomach and some abdomen, which caused Muscular to, just sometimes wince in pain. And he was a bit shocked at the matter of the fact that this guy was able to make Muscular himself kneel. And Prophet looked down at Muscular, and with a swing, putting all his remaining energy into strength, his suit said, maximum strength, and proceeded to uppercut Muscular so hard at the bottom of the jaw that as he hit the mountainside, he hit his temple, causing him to black out. And Izuku picked Koda up and skid down the mountain as Aizawa came to find them. And he looked at Izuku and said, "That was risky." He said, "Yep." He said, "Yes, it was. But I at least saved the child." And he said, "Yeah, indeed you did." And Izuku was happy about that at the very least. He's able to save Koda without much problem. And so, when he dropped him off with the others who were now safe, as Vlad took care of them. Vlad, by the way, is the blood hero. I don't know how I remember him, considering that was one of the only times he showed up. So, yeah, I think it's just a cool name and cool quirk. But, anywho, when he dropped them off, he helped Wild Wild Pussycats fight the villains that were there. And fought the one with the giant-ass swords attached to the bundle. And Izuku commented on how irrational that was, considering they can easily be dealt with despite its enormous mass. And even though it could cause massive damage and kill rather easily, it's the matter of the facts of it being extremely unreliable. As if the belt loosened even the slightest, all of the swords could come out at once, and cause him to lose the battle. And the villain thanked him. And Izuku said, "Why are you thanking me? There's no reason to." And he said, You helped me, and didn't discriminate, so at least I've got to thank you." And he said, "There's no reason to discriminate. You're a villain, and that's all I need to know. If you were quite a nice person, and were a hero instead, perhaps I wouldn't want to cause any more trouble than I already do. But I need to take you in, even though I don't want to." And of course, had his fight with the lizard villain, taking him down after using his armor to block the swords, shattering them, which caused a little bit of concern for the villain, but nothing too severe, as he had quite a few more behind his back. Izuku then scanned his body, thinking about the matter of the fact that he may even have a few more weapons on him. But to his joyous situation, the villain didn't. And so Izuku went right towards him, and used his body and his armor to block them. And because of the lizard villain's strength, the blade shattered quickly and quite effectively at that fact. And the villain looked quite surprised at all of this that just happened. And Izuku said to him, "This is what happens when you're irrational, but you fought well. Goodbye." And he grabbed the villain, hitting his head against his knee, causing the villain to pass out. And he went on to help the big guy, the big Wild Pussycat, against the guy with the magnetics. And he managed to grip Izuku with his quirk, but Izuku activated his cloak. Cloak engaged. And the magnetic field was cut off from his suit. And he went up behind the villain, put his hands around him, and covered his mouth, beginning to take him down as he pulled him back, and decloaked because of it. And the villain tried to break free, but couldn't break free due to Izuku's overwhelming strength. And this caused the villain to pass out due to lack of air. Izuku didn't want to kill if he didn't have to, and he didn't. Well, more like he doesn't yet. But then, suddenly as on cue, as all the villains in the area were taken down, he heard a bit of a laugh, and saw a man in the trees. And Izuku went up to get him, but noticed the marble in his hand, and he said, "You can try, but your friend might be in trouble." And Izuku scanned the marble, and saw that it had Katsuki Bakugo's DNA in it. And Izuku stood there. Where are you taking him? That's not for you to know. And then a portal appeared behind him and Izuku went as fast as he could. But wasn't able to catch him just in time. And the magician flew right under his fingers and disappeared. This upset Izuku, but he knew it wasn't his fault, even though he did fail to save Bakugo. But considering that he managed to get a lock, managed to just place a tracker, a single nanite, onto the God, my memory's failing me now. Onto the magician, I don't know what his exact name, Mr. Compress. He managed to place a single nanite on Mr. Compressed, which was able to lead them, luckily, to their headquarters. But Izuku made a plan of attack and thought, what if we do something plain? I don't think they have any windows considering it's a bar. A very well hidden bar at that. But if we act like somebody ordered pizza, perhaps me. Since I'm able to synthesize voices somewhat, I should be able to get their attention. And you, All Might, as the door opens, bust in. Bust in as you hear their voices, confused. And All Might nodded. I like that. Alright, we'll go with that. And the heroes began to gather. And they all gathered at the place, at the bar. And when they knocked and Izuku said, "Hey, your pizza's here," Shigaraki looked around at everyone and said, "Who ordered pizza?" And everyone was confused at it. And All Might, hearing this, bust through the wall. "I am here!" he yelled. And everyone was in shock, like, what the hell? And they all went to go try to get their combat stations, but Kodagiri grabbed Bakugo and Shigaraki, and everyone else in the room before they could get too banged up, and poofed, teleported away to All For One, as All For One's arrival was very, very soon to come. This was quite a surprise, as Shigaraki did mention, the boss is back. The boss is back. So, it'll be nice when you meet each other again, All Might. Which had All Might question some things, but as he pulled together, he said, All For One. And Izuku searched through the database. Searched through the database his suit had. Managed to find some data. All For One. About 21 quirks, right? And All Might said, how do you know that? And he said, the files of the hospital he was placed in, the high security prison. They had data on him, and the systems in my suit were able to bypass the security and find data. And he said, I see. Like, apparently he's quite old. And you fought before, am I correct? And All Might nodded. Yes, we did. And he said, I see. Well, we have to rescue Bakugo. But the matter of the fact is, if I'm able to get satellite access. And they're like, satellite access? Why do you need that? It's like, if we can get a good reading on the area, then maybe I'll be able to forge a plan, and we can use that plan and form an operation, and use it to save Bakugo, and not only that, catch all the villains in All For One off guard. And if we do that, we may have the advantage for a little bit. But we should get all the professional heroes together for this. And Nezu and everyone else in the room nodded and said, agreed. Because All For One is ridiculously powerful. 21 quirks, all mastered, all at their fullest potential due to his power. He's able to take quirks, give them to people, and even distribute them for others. It's just a matter of the fact if we can push past that. But I don't know if we're strong enough. We'll just have to see. And if we are strong enough, we should be able to easily take him down. And I said that won't be easy. And Izuku agreed. No, of course it won't be easy. Nothing's ever easy. And All Might had a little bit of a chuckle. That's correct. And of course, Izuku brought 1A there, as they needed to hear this situation as well if they were going to save Bakugo. And because there was nowhere else for them to run. Kurogiri could be dealt with by other professional heroes, as there are counters to his quirk. And if we can counter the quirk, then we don't need to worry about Kurogiri and his ability to teleport. And the villains agreed. Well, the heroes agreed. They're like, yes. It's like, yes, if we're able to counter the teleportation quirk, the warp quirk, we should have no issue taking the rest out. He said, don't say that. If you jinx yourself, well, let's just say there'll be quite a lot of trouble. And this trouble, we really don't need. It'll be quite the problem. And they waited until it was extremely late at night, specifically. They waited for it to be so late at night because they could at least have an upper hand. Though there were still people waltzing around in the market and watching watching the news on the giant screen. And yes, the exact same thing happens in canon, except Izuku isn't there to help the others. They're doing it by themselves, and Izuku just gave them another quick brief on the plan before going with All Might to help him take on All for One. As the best genius, he's getting his absolute ass clapped, and poor best genius, because I feel really bad for him if you see his injuries in the anime. But hey, and it's pretty much the same thing that happens in canon for when they get there as well. Like when they're saving Bakugo, and Bakugo grips onto Kirishima and all that. But with All for One and All Might and Prophet, aka Izuku, and yes, they do have the same hero names as in canon, but Izuku's hero name is Prophet. Which is quite amazing to say the least, because, Crisis is an amazing game. But yeah, and All for One just like, oh, you brought a friend with you, All Might? He said he insisted on coming. After all, he's quite powerful. And Izuku's suits suddenly spoke to him. Unknown energy signature detected. And Izuku asked himself mentally, unknown energy source? He said, Remnants Seth energy. Warning, Seth battery. And Izuku sent out a bit of a scan, and about behind All for One, in a bit of a broken down building, there was quite the place. There was a Seth battery hiding behind there, but it's just a matter of the fact of using it at the right time, because if he didn't, it would cause some pretty bad problems. And causing these problems would have quite the bad effect, which could eventually cause even bigger problems. However, Izuku still stood strong with him, and there goes my fan, because me being the dickhead I am, I thought it may or may not have been a good idea to tug on its cord. So, I will be right back. I'm awfully sorry for this cut. Okay, I have returned. My apologies. Back to this wonderful fight, which is going to be quite the spectacle. And the same battle happens with canon for All Might and All for One, except All Might doesn't use the big smash to the United States of Smash, may I add, to take him down, as he runs out of energy way before. And Izuku, who gets injured halfway through, his suit is rebooting, waking back up. Suit reboot detected. It's reboot complete. And Izuku got up, looking around at all the rubble, and thought of how terrible it was, seeing everyone injured. But that isn't what he cared about. He needed to help All Might. Izuku then got up, forcing his body to rise. And he went back to where the Seth battery was, dragging it out, and All for One turned to see him carrying something about 2 times the size of a tank shell. A really high caliber tank shell at that. And they saw the energy coming off of it, and Izuku's suit began to absorb it. This is, and on the top left of his suit, it says, "Warning, external power source detected. Suit overloaded." And his energy became pretty much unlimited, and his armor went to immediate armor mode. He was a walking tank, and All for One turned around and blasted him. But all of his attacks were pretty much futile, as Izuku kept walking, not even being pushed back. And he grabbed some of the things that All for One were shooting at him, and pulled All for One towards him. And All for One used the airburst quirk in his arm to try and burst Izuku away, but also himself. But Izuku had too much of a grip, and he pulled him with all of his strength and uppercut and sucker punched him right in the mass, causing his mass to break further. And All for One got back up after falling against the ground and going back a bit. He was confused at what was going on. He said, "Oh, looks like you're showing your true power." And said, "I am the Prophet." This is like, "I have something to ask you, All for One. What are you willing to sacrifice?" And as he said that, he ran towards him as fast as his suit allowed him. With all the energy in his suit, he used it to also enhance his speed and strength, buffing it to all hell. And no matter what All for One threw at him, he even used that massive arm and hit Izuku with it, causing him to block. And he returned all of his power to his armor and his suit's stability. And he began blocking it with all of his might, as much as he can. And eventually, when the dust cleared, Izuku was still standing there, as he thought he was running out of power, as he didn't know how long the source would last, but it would still last him quite a while more than this. So he punched All for One back, and they traded hits for quite a while. Before All for One blasted him in the chest, causing him to fly a bit. But Izuku easily stabilized himself and ran towards him, dodging air shots as much as he can, and dodging those things that he fires that seem like circuits from the Fate series, smashing his fist on them, shattering them, and also dodging all the other air range quirks All for One has. And when he gets to him, he lays quite a large amount of basic machine gun blows against him. And doing it, he reared back for a final punch, as his suit began to run out of power. And he wasn't prepared for this surge. It was so powerful, and the nanites were 3 in his body, so his body was aching, and the nanosuit HUD was beginning to have a bit of a spasm. But he reared his fist back and punched All for One in the stomach, grabbed his head, Izuku slammed his own against All for One's. Kept holding him, and kept hitting him over and over and over again, as All for One's body began to give in because of the amount of power he was letting off, not able to keep up with it. And Izuku then reared up for a final punch, with all he had left, as his suit began to run out of power, and his suit said, "External power source depleting." And with one final strike, he knocked All For One into the ground, causing the ground to crack and some bit shatter right where he was. As the news was like, what is this new hero? It's amazing. He is amazing. It's like, is this the Prophet? And one final time, before All For One lost consciousness, Izuku asked him again, I will ask once more. And he leaned down, as his suit was tightening up. What are you willing to sacrifice to beat foes that are on a far higher level than you? And All For One couldn't answer, as Izuku raised his elbow and BAM! Right into All For One's back, causing it to fracture a small bit, and him passing out because of shock and pain and overexhaustion. And he went up to All Might. All Might was still with barely enough energy left, and he lifted his skinny Might up, and he raised his fist. And All Might, seeing this, had a few tears in his eyes. But he himself shakingly raised a fist of pure hope, saying, "I have won." And he turns and points to the camera and says, "It's your turn now." He just says, generalizing every hero and every person in humanity, "It's your turn." Then Izuku looked at the camera, and it blacked out, going off with a And Izuku looked to All Might and began walking away with him. And as he got away, he fell onto his fist and knee, and everyone asked if he was alright, which he was, but he was absolutely shredded, and he couldn't move, as he said, "I can't move. The suit, it won't." And Uraraka went up to him and looked him in the visor. "It's not about the suit, Izuku, Prophet. It's about who's in it that matters." And Izuku looked at Uraraka and thanked her, as even though his suit couldn't move, Uraraka made him weightless, and Kirishima carried him on his back. As the police came up, and they went to go check on Prophet, and the hospital did as well. "Is he alright?" And they said, "Yeah, he's just tired. He can't move." And they're like, "Yeah, after that blow, I bet he can't." "Well, if he's still up, you're a great hero, buddy. You saved thousands of lives today, along with All Might." And Izuku, behind the mask, for the first time he shed a tear. Well, for the first time in years, he shed a tear. And he closed his eyes, letting his suit, because of the overload, shut down as everything went black and the suit turned off. That was the temporary end of the man they called Prophet, the logical war machine that protected everyone. And as a monologue, Izuku said, it's like this is in the mind of Izuku. A logical war machine that people rely on goes against every foe that stands in humanity's way. But what if that machine fails? What if that machine gives in? What if it breaks? What then? What happens to humanity then, if they lose the only thing that fights for them, and that allows them to win? What will they be willing to sacrifice? What will I be willing to sacrifice after this, if I have anything else to sacrifice? But I now know I have those that care about me, and I will forever take care of them as long as I stand. Now, here's a question I'll ask everyone. What are you willing to sacrifice? After all, I'm only human.